So you held the ashes of a former president.
No, I didn't say that. I said I held the ashes of a founding father.
Oh, a founding father.
Yes, never president.
Oh, okay.
And not one of the names you think of when you think of founding fathers, but the reality is it's not just the people in Philadelphia. There are other names that should be included in the list, and that's what's kind of fun about exploring these legends is we find the wackiest story like ever when it related to American history, and then find it's got a connection to much bigger things. So it was so exciting to go to Rhode Island and get deep into the archives of the Historical Society and hold this jar. I've said too much already. I'm so excited though. It's one of these things where you're just like, how did this happen? And then you just have so many more questions, and that's the fun of it.
Because I was just reading something about the story of Hampton City, Rhode Island. Did you guys ever talk about that?
No, what's that?
So it's like this little, it's called Hampton City, but it's this little village in Rhode Island in the mid 1800s. It was kind of secluded, and people never went back there because apparently it was they were just making up all sorts of stories about it because it was so secluded. And then someone finally went back there to check the place out, and it was completely abandoned.
Ooh.
There was like nobody back there. They thought it was a place where freed slaves would have had settled or anything, but they went back there and there was nothing left. And now these days, there's nothing but the foundations of the few buildings that were there that were left.
Sure. Well, I think when people think of ghost towns, they think of the Old West, but we have tons around New England. There are plenty of little townships and villages and communities that just never made it. People had kids who just moved away because living there sucked. And
right,
so,
yeah.
Mom and dad dies, the house rots, and it's nothing but a cellar hole today. That story sort of repeats all around, and we just don't think of it. But yeah, New England's got plenty.
Yeah,
Dogtown up in Gloucester, right? That's an example.
Oh, is it? I don't know if I'm familiar with Dogtown.
Oh, so it's it's called Dogtown because at some point it was left to the dogs, but we know so much about it because Roger Babson of Babson College went in and chronicled all these various cellar holes and who used to live there. And then during the Great Depression, he put stonemasons to work by putting them out there in these woods and carving inspirational sayings on all these rocks. And I think
yes.
Yeah, so that's
right.
all around Dogtown. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's amazing how creepy New England can be, and we forget that it is basically the oldest part of the country as far as Western settlers go.
Yeah,
I guess
that's right.
If you don't count, the Vikings in Newfoundland or something like that.
And not only that, we hold on to our history here, and just walk through our cemeteries, and you've got some of the best epitaphs, right? I love the old one, and I've seen it a few times. I'm waiting and watching.
Ew.
And when you see the old New England death head and the body's been in the ground for centuries, and you just get this chill. And we know how to do epitaphs in New England. I was looking at one in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and this one dates back to 1771, and it sent a chill down my spine because it's a joke I've made repeatedly. But it says, "Here lies the body of Mr. David Sherman, who was killed by lightning in the house of God at public worship. He was killed when lightning struck him in church on Sunday and died." And I've always said that's why I don't go to church. I don't want lightning to strike and anyone innocent to get killed. And it happened in 1771. It's right there on his headstone.
I think it's amazing that they even buried him and gave him a headstone after something like that happening, because it used to be like when some cow gave sour milk, they would blame the widow in the town, and then they would you're actually, the latest New England Legends podcast is about that, right? The witch up in Pownell, Vermont.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. As soon as things go wrong. And so there was a time when a widow becomes the ward of the town, and no one likes taking care of them. No one likes bringing their firewood and their food and taking care of their yard work. And if they're at all bitter about it, then it just gets even worse. So things go wrong, and you say, you know what? I never liked the way you looked at me. And suddenly she's a witch.
Yeah. And then this guy gets struck by lightning in church. Like, that's not a clear message, and then they give him a burial.
It gets worse though. So I did some more digging on it, because when I see a headstone like that, I'm like, I'm not moving until I know everything. And so I found this, it was, you go digging through old books, and it was called A Journal for the Town of Fairfield, Connecticut, which is the next town over. And there's only one entry for the whole year of 1771. And as you can imagine, it's this, but there's more. It says the lightning struck Stratfield Meeting House and killed Uncle John Burr, ripped open the shoes of his brother Ozias that stood near him, and likewise killed David Sherman. So there were 2 deaths, and a guy lost a shoe in the same lightning strike.
Jeez. That's crazy. And yet those guys walk free, and yet, there's someone who blames somebody else for looking at their wife the wrong way, and this poor woman, gets stoned to death.
Yeah, that's our history, and those are our legends. And I don't know. I think it's important we talk about them, because at some point they sort of become a metaphor, for how we treat each other. I mean, yeah, we're not drowning witches in the river anymore, but boy, if you've ever been to a PTA meeting.
Right. Oh yeah, things really haven't changed all that much, and then especially with social media.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Same thing. Somebody looks at somebody the wrong way, and next thing you know, you're on like Twitter, or even like, some waiter looks at you the wrong way, and you're on Yelp, and the next thing you know, it's like this place has rats, and then there's bodies in the basement. And they're using babies for gravy, and yeah, it's crazy, and people believe it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we're still casting stones, of course, but now we do it a different way. And now, of course, it's October, it's Halloween, and it's a time to connect with the ghostly side of things. And I think that's important too. We're all going to die one day. That's the headline. And what comes next is this great mystery. And so we're all products of where we grew up and how we were raised in our communities. And why is it we talk about some buildings being haunted and some we don't? And that's intrigued me since I started in this over 20 years ago.
You brought up an interesting question in the latest New England Legends podcast, and that is, how come ghosts aren't naked? I thought that was just a brilliant question, because it's like, do the clothes die too with them? Do the spirit of the clothes go with them into wherever they go into limbo?
Yeah, no, I've been asked that by skeptics in the past, and I think it's a completely fair question. Okay, maybe a person has a soul or a spirit, but with their clothes. And an experiment I like to do is, and you can try this now, if anyone out there wants to just close their eyes for a moment, take a mental picture of yourself, wherever you're comfortable, and then ask yourself this: did you picture yourself naked? Did you see yourself naked, or did you see yourself with clothes, sweatpants on, whatever? And a lot of people don't see their feet either. They just see their upper torso. And another question I get asked is, how come ghosts are just upper torsos floating down the hall and they're not naked? And maybe it's because it's kind of like a projection or a message. Just like when you pictured yourself, you didn't picture yourself naked, but you made a projection of yourself. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't have solid answers. I just think it's sort of fun to think about that, these things keep coming up. And the reason we asked that question is because we were chasing the story of a ghostly horse and buggy in Hull, Massachusetts.
Right.
And so, yeah, people and on the highest authority in the town in the year 1900, they were seeing this buggy go down the street in silence, no noise, and then it would just vanish. And I mean, imagine, whether you believe in ghosts or not, imagine you see that at midnight, and then you tell people, and they're incredulous. I don't believe you. You're lying. But you know what you saw, and it just sort of shakes up everything you thought you knew.
I can't think of anything more terrifying than me naked. I mean, that would be that's the most horrifying thing I can think of. So that would be a pretty scary ghost.
Right.
If I thought of that,
Imagine after you're gone, you come before your child or maybe your grandchildren one day, if that's how things go, and your grandpa, but naked grandpa. I mean, there's no amount of therapy. Yeah.
Right. Just naked grandpa in general, dead or alive.
I'm out.
That's a scary thing, right?
Yeah. Exorcism right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sage the house down, because we're not staying here tonight. Another thing you just brought up, and that's curious to me, is that when we think of ghosts not just clothed, but wearing like period wear, like early 19th or 20th century, or even older than that. They're wearing pantaloons or buckle shoes and things like that. I've never heard of a ghost story where the ghost is wearing sweatpants.
Yeah, well, I have, but that's
really?
me.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm here, right?
Okay. Is there a sweatpant ghost?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, the most common stories that I hear about aren't really the ones that get made into Hollywood movies. The scary ones, of course, rise to the the cultural consciousness, but the reality is most people experience some sort of closure. So you see grandpa or grandma just 2 weeks after they died, or I remember talking to a guy who said, his buddy had just died in a motorcycle accident, and he was really upset. He was sitting in his front room, and he said right on the sidewalk in front of his house, he saw his buddy, who had been dead for about a week, walk by in jeans and a t-shirt and just sort of like give him that 2-finger salute off of his eyebrow and just disappeared. And he said for him, that was the goodbye that he didn't get. And that's really the most common story. So, all right, that guy wasn't in sweatpants, but will you give me blue jeans? Can I have that
but
one?
still, again, like jeans,
right.
or even like wearing a baseball hat,
of course.
Something like that. Yeah. I just don't hear a lot of those, unless it's like, some ghost wandering Walmart wearing their pajama bottoms and, and
how could you tell? You'd have to go up and push on the person and see if your hand goes through. Right. And then that gets awkward fast.
So what is the one New England legend that has affected you the most?
Oh, geez. That's so hard to pick because every week we're looking for something new. And what's really cool about doing this is that we've sort of formed a community between the podcast. We've got a Facebook group with over 6,000 members of people sharing weird stories. And I think sort of collectively, it's amazing how so many people have come forward and said, hey, in my little town in Maine or my little town in Massachusetts, we've got this witch's grave. One of the things I love the most is when there's something specific. You've got a time period, you've got a place, you've got a date, and arguably, you could go there and watch it repeat. And, one of them is, there's the ghost of Elsie out in Braintree. And have you heard that one?
No, I don't think so.
So she's been seen all around the Evergreen Cemetery, and there's a specific date. It's in April. Forgive me, I forget the exact date, but she's been seen up and down the side of the road. I've talked to locals who said her parents have seen her walking around on the street, and then she disappears. And the legend is that she was murdered on her wedding day, and she's seen in her white dress, and that's why she haunts the place. But we looked into it, and there was no Elsie buried there. However, in a cemetery about a mile away, there was a young girl named Elsie who was a murder victim in the late 1800s, and it was a horrific murder. Like she and her parents were all murdered in their house, and it was big headline news for a little while. And she's buried not too far away. So what happens is you hear about the murder of a girl, and then people see this apparition. We don't even know if they're connected. But we know that people go there every April near Evergreen Cemetery and try to look for her ghost. And enough people have seen it and talked about it that it still continues to this day, which to me is, I love that connection. And then you can sort of imagine that it might be that murder we're talking about, but we're just not sure.
Now, I remember, I think it was you who asked me a long time ago, and I asked around here in the city from the people that I knew, and I wasn't able to really get any clear answer, but I think it was you that asked me something about tunnels under the city of Worcester.
That's right. That's the first time you let me down.
I'm sorry. Oh, really? Just that one time? Boy, you
no, that's the first.
Oh, okay. The first time. Okay,
right.
Great. Thanks.
I was like, that's right. Yeah, I was like, Mike, how do we get down there? And you're like, I'm on it. Yeah. How's that going?
There's nobody, like I talked to all these people. Most of the people don't know, either they wouldn't tell me or they said they have no idea what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you found anything else about any kind of.
No, I put my best man on it and just gave up.
Yeah, sorry. I was distracted by an Italian sub.
Fair enough. That
was probably it.
No, you know what? It's I think that shot across my desk. I sent it your way, and I haven't really looked since. But you never know when it'll come up again. Maybe someone's listening now and says, "I know what we're talking about," and we'll get 2 tickets to the underground.
Another one that I don't know if you heard of is the and I correct me if I'm wrong. You may actually have done a podcast on this. Hardy, Maine, and Ipswich, Massachusetts.
No.
He was what they called a moon cusser. And he would set bonfires on the shores of Ipswich to lure ships towards the rocks. Okay. And they would crash into the rocks, and then he would go out and kill everyone and steal whatever they had on the ship. So he was like a pirate that operated from land. almost.
Was common. I don't know that story, but an identical one is out on Block Island, and it's called the Palatine Light. And this was a common practice. What you would do, it's terrible. You'd put a stump in the ground and put a mule with a lantern around its neck, and you'd set it back, hundreds of yards offshore, and just have the mule walk in circles. And so ships would think that was the lighthouse. And so they think, oh, I got plenty of room to get around this island. And then they beach and they wreck right on the shore. And I guess if you're really notorious, you kill the whole crew, or you just wait till they're off the ship and you go in and you loot it. But that happened not just in New England and not just in Massachusetts, but that story just comes up again and again. And I mean, it's awful. I mean, it's absolutely attempted murder, and it was not that uncommon.
Well, this guy would go up to the wreck and kill the people.
Okay.
And they finally caught him, and they chained him to a rock near the shore. And I guess one of the ways, a form of execution at this time, which I think was the early 1800s, was they would make him dig in the sand until he dropped dead.
Oh, that's brutal.
Have you heard of anything like that?
I have heard of people being chained to the ground during low tide. Right. And then you let the tide kill him, which is horrible, right? Because it's slow. Like first, just the water's hitting your feet, and then it comes up a little higher to your knees and then to your waist, and you know what's coming, and it's such a torturous way to go. I have heard of that, but not digging till you die.
Yeah, that is brutal. You guys, I guess you just have to be there with a gun or something and make the person keep digging. I mean, that's just.
We've come so far, haven't we?
I know,
as
right?
a society.
Now it's just it's an injection. Now
that's right. That's so civil.
Another thing I want to ask about is there is and I keep reading it about the vampire stories in New England, or alleged vampire stories. So, in most of the vampire stories I read about, they call it a New England tradition of taking the person who was suspected of being a vampire, or maybe who was killed by a vampire, cutting out their heart and burning it.
Yeah.
And that's like a New England thing?
Yeah, it's like chowder, like
okay. That's Manhattan clam chowder.
No,
definitely not New England clam chowder.
That abomination with tomato sauce.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So the reality is that tradition goes back centuries, and vampires have always been around when there were plagues. And a plague that was ravaging New England was consumption, or tuberculosis. And it was so hard to get your head around it. You could live in a community where 4 houses on your street, everybody died, and someone else, nobody's killed. And people start wondering, well, this good church-going family dies, and these people that don't even go to church, they're healthy, and what's going on here? And even though people sort of understood contagion, you do start to lose rational thought. And with tuberculosis, it eats away at your lungs. And imagine your loved one, you walk in the morning and there's blood in the corner of their mouth and down their neck. And you think, oh my gosh, someone's been feeding on them, or they've been feeding. The reality is they've been coughing all night and breaking blood vessels in their lungs and coughing up their own blood. Vampires before Bram Stoker and before Twilight and everything else were not sexy. They were walking corpses.
Right.
And so one of the most famous in New England was Mercy Brown down in Exeter, Rhode Island. She died of tuberculosis. Her mother died of tuberculosis. Her sister died, and her brother's really sick. And her father, with no other options, they said, if you can discover who the vampire is, you have a chance to break the spell. And his son's dying. He's already lost his wife and 2 daughters. And Mercy was in a keep because she had died during the winter, so she wasn't in the ground yet. They keep you in an above ground, keep.
Like kind of like a vault.
Yeah, exactly.
Some old cemeteries. Yeah.
A vault, by the way, that had a bell on the outside with a rope that would hang on the inside.
Right.
Just in case you're in there and you're not dead.
Well, they used to do that with buried people too, didn't they?
Right,
They have like a contraption that they were, once you buried them, there was still like a string that they had access to ring a bell on the top. Oh my God.
Dead ringers. Yeah, that's
dead ringers.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Imagine that. And the worst part is if you work at the cemetery and you hear the ringing, you're like, we got to get the shovel. Come on.
Bob, can you get this one?
Yeah, this is, you know how long it takes to dig them back up? I mean, it's all day, So the Mercy's in there, and they discovered that her corpse had moved and she hadn't decomposed, which to them was proof that she must be the vampire. even though, of course, she died in the winter and it was cold, so that's why she wasn't decomposing. But a doctor surgically removed her heart. They burned it on a rock. They mixed the ashes in an elixir and fed it to her brother in an effort to break the spell. And yeah, it happened. It was in the Providence Journal.
That's another thing I read about. Again, I think this is also Rhode Island. So Jewett City, Rhode Island.
That's Connecticut. That's Connecticut.
Oh, is that Connecticut?
Yep.
Okay, so Jewett City, Connecticut, there was the Ray family.
Yep.
You know this story?
I sure do, yeah.
Okay, so they did the same thing. Like, this family was just riddled with disease. So
tuberculosis.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So they did the same thing. They would they cut the heart out of a brother who passed away, and they burned it and then put the ashes, and they all consumed the ashes to cure themselves.
Try to cure themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Try to cure themselves. Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, and it made the paper. They said it's an old superstition, and the Jewett City vampires. And the reality was, before the Rays, there was someone a few decades earlier, and we know about it. We actually did a podcast on this. Some kids were playing in like a gravel pit where there was some excavating going on. And imagine this: you're playing as you would a 10-year-old boy, and there's all this stuff being dug up, and they slide down a dirt hill, and a human skull rolls down behind them.
Oh.
And then, so they call the mom comes over and oh my, you're right, that is a human skull. They call the police, and the police investigate. It's not a new skull. They had disturbed a family grave, and when the state archaeologist came to excavate these graves, he discovered that the leg bones had been removed and crossed over the chest.
Yes.
And the head had been removed and turned around, like to face the other way, decapitated. And he looked and he said, this was done after the body was in the ground. Why was this done? And folklorists knew right away. Someone thought this person was a vampire, and so you have to disrupt him. The tradition of nailing a stake through the heart has nothing to do with putting wood into the heart of a vampire. They used to literally try to nail the body down so it couldn't get up anymore. It's just one of the ways to deal with a vampire.
Yeah, that was in this Jewett City story too, that they
That's right.
found.
Same town. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that they took the leg bones and they made them into an X or a cross, and then they would put some of them, the skulls, they would take them and put them down by the feet.
Yeah, anything to disrupt the vampire or what you believed. Because here's, and as crazy as it sounds about Mercy Brown, like if you've lost two of your daughters, your wife, and your son is now sick, and someone said, hey, if we dig up your dead daughter and burn her heart, there's a 1 in a million chance of saving your kid. Well, she's not going to be more dead. I can't promise I wouldn't do the same thing. I remember when my mother, one of her closest friends, had breast cancer, devout Catholic, wanted to go to Lourdes, France and get dipped in the water. And she was, stage 4 and beyond at that point. And so my mother took her over there and did this. She needed a miracle. Science had no answer for her, right? Medicine had no cure. She was past chemo and radiation. So her Catholic faith led her to Lourdes, France to dip into the water. She did pass away anyway, but it doesn't matter, right? She had to say she tried everything. And that was her last attempt, was to try something from her faith as opposed to from the medical books. And I can't promise any one of us wouldn't try the same thing if we were just backed into a corner.
You're right. And then there are those stories of what they, some people call miracles.
Well, right.
Sometimes things happen where all of a sudden they're better. They get better.
That's the crazy thing. Some people drank that elixir and they got better. Now, the skeptics would say they were going to get better anyway. And you might be right, but it doesn't matter. It has to work 1 in a million times that someone else is going to try it.
Right. And it's just that 1 in a million times that gets a million people to try to do the same thing. Right.
A million desperate and scared people who are living in the time of a plague where folks are dying arbitrarily, and it's really, really scary.
Right.
And that's, we covered so many vampire stories because of COVID, because we're like, look, we've been here before, not in our lifetime, but we have been through these kinds of scary things, and just like before, people lose their minds. People are afraid, and but I think that our history and our legends and our lore have something to teach us about it.
So I'm pretty sure you saw this, that the Conjuring House is up for sale.
Yes.
Did you put a bid in for that?
I did.
Did you really?
I had about $25 that I could spare.
All right.
Well, and I don't think it was taken seriously.
You got to try.
I got to try. Yeah. No, I bought a lottery ticket in the hopes of buying
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I do too.
Right. Like $1 in a dream, baby.
That's right.
Yeah. So yes, I know I've been in there a number of times.
I know we've talked about that you've been there a bunch.
Yep. We filmed the Ghost Adventures Halloween special there a couple of years ago, and I got to go in there the day after the current owner. It was like his first night in, and he called me and said, "Do you want to come down?" And and I know the whole Perrin family. It's such a strange story to see when you know what really happened compared to what that was turned into in the movie. And now the house is infamous. I mean, people drive by it all the time just to get a look at it.
Yeah.
So if you buy it, you're going to have an attraction on your hand.
You're going to be terrified by tourists.
By tourists who
Right.
are knocking on the door at all hours of the day and night. Yeah.
Yeah, the ghosts left a long time ago because they were sick of that crap.
That's right. Yeah. They're at peace. You will
That's
not
right.
be. Yeah.
And then I was looking at I was on Facebook and I saw that you had visited another really terrifying place in Massachusetts, the birthplace of the Toll House cookie.
Yes. I was just there the other night. Horrific. Are you kidding me? That's Mecca. It's my weakness, Mike. Toll House cookies. I mean,
yeah.
I can resist anything but that, and so the Toll House is gone, by the way, because some people had responded to my post saying, we should go there. I love those cookies. I'm like, oh no, that sign is literally pointing to a Walgreens now.
Oh,
The Toll House burned down in like 1984.
oh God.
All we have left is the recipe.
What's terrifying to me is being locked in the Toll House filled with cookies and having absolutely not one drop of milk.
Oh, that would be bad.
That'd
be horrible.
I know, that's a nightmare. That's one of my nightmares.
I shudder.
Or like having a pizza in front of you but not having any arms.
Or beer.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
We're on the same level there.
Yeah. That would be horrible.
So October is like your super busy month. This is like your Super Bowl and Christmas all rolled up into one.
Yeah.
And so you're going around and you always do some really great talks at local places. And where's the next place you're going to be?
Honestly, I only know what tonight is because that's all I can do is because I'm every single night I'm somewhere. Every night of this month I've been somewhere, and so some of them are virtual, by the way, and they go into November as well. So some are virtual, so people can attend from anywhere. There's various libraries, like tonight it's Windham, New Hampshire, and tomorrow I'll be in Lynnfield, Massachusetts, and I'll be in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. I'll be in Fitchburg in mid-November. So
that's scary. Yeah, Fitchburg.
Come on. No, it's great. You know what? I love it. I love when you get to share the stories directly with people. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then I also get tons of leads. People go to these things and they're just like, "Hey, have you heard about such and such?" And you jot it down, and next thing you know, you got another story to work on.
Well, that's how these stories remain alive, with storytellers like you who go around and keep these stories alive. Whether it's talking to people directly or in podcast form or on TV.
Yeah, it's but I thank you for saying that. But the reality is, I think I find out about it because a community is talking about it, right? It's never just one person that has something to say about it. It's always like a community that's whispering about this cemetery or that house or this building or whatever, and then it eventually makes my radar, and then you go and you look for it and you find out, wow, there's something to this. Or I at least want to know, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where, there's people gathered at midnight waiting to knock on a specific headstone 3 times under a full moon, and
Right, yeah.
and see what happens.
So when you go, like, say you get a lead, you go in to investigate, do you usually get a different story from each person you talk to? Like a different point of view or a different interpretation?
I always want to ask as many people as possible, about it. Because again, one person saying this building is haunted, it's not enough for me. But when you talk to different people and you learn, there's a really cool place in Ashland, Massachusetts called Stone's Public House. And I've been fortunate to check it out a lot over the years. And, I remember talking to one of the waiters who said it was his first summer there. He never believed in ghosts. And he said, someone said to him, "Hey, there's a little girl in the window right above there, the patio seating out front."
Yes, I've heard this.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so he looks up and he says, I don't see anything. And he knows that window is storage. There shouldn't be anyone in there. So he shrugs, he takes a look, the door's locked, everything's fine. Person must have been confused. The third and fourth time it happened that summer. And he's figuring, there's not some cosmic joke on me. These people are not trying to pull one over. People are seeing a little girl in that window, which is just storage and it's locked and shouldn't be anyone in there. And so you start to just sort of put connections together. And then, of course, other people have more profound experiences than that. They get touched, they hear voices, they see something move through the building. And I love that. I love when it's just, you don't have to believe. He's like, I don't believe in ghosts, but like 5 people have seen this ghost on my watch all summer, and you go, right, no such thing. But
there's got to be something.
What would you like to call it?
Right.
What term makes you comfortable?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's one of the things I love when you just sort of like put these little data points together and realize there's a trend.
Yeah. Oh man. And there's so much of it here in New England. New
Oh,
England's a
no
creepy
shortage.
place. It's such a creepy place, and I love
is.
it. Well, Jeff, I appreciate it. Before I let you go, I want to ask how you're doing with your book about your journey climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And I have to tell people, Jeff is a great storyteller, not just with spooky stuff, but this story of him and how he got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, your journey and training and how to get there and the actual climbing of the mountain. How's that going so far?
Yeah, great. Yeah, that book came out in March, and what's cool is I also do a lot of talks about that, and some of those are virtual, and I've got some of those coming up in October. It's all about ghosts and legends, but I talk about Kilimanjaro as well. It's what I love about mountain stories is that it can always be a metaphor. We all have mountains to climb, whether it's
Right.
losing weight or quitting smoking or getting a new job or whatever it is. And so I love sharing it because for me, Kilimanjaro was just on my bucket list forever. And then you know how it is. You get into your midlife and you're dad and you got a house to take care of and cars that need repairs and stuff. And you don't do anything for yourself anymore except like just drive your kid around and,
Oh my God, that is my life. Oh my God.
I know. Pay your bills and like find the next paycheck so you could, keep food on the table. And then to do this thing that felt so selfish on the one hand, and yet made me a better, more whole person on the other, was just, it was profound to go through. And it's got me thinking about my next adventure and realizing that I'm worth investing in as well, not just my family or
Nice.
my daughter,
Nice. Well, please give your website where people can keep track of wherever you're speaking and the virtual stuff and the other events that you do throughout the year.
Sure, yeah. So my name, jeffbelanger.com, or all my stuff is on the New England Legends website as well, which is our New England Legends, OUR, newenglandlegends.com. And, always grateful to meet other people that love this stuff and share stories.
Well, I love the podcast, and they're in the podcast. The episodes themselves are in bite-sized pieces. So, like it goes anywhere from, 8 to 15 minutes or so. And you guys do a great job. You get the sound effects in there and voice actors and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun to listen to.
Thank you.
And so that's definitely worth checking out. So Jeff Belanger, thanks again. Good luck getting through this October. Oh, I wanted to ask you one other thing about
Sure.
Halloween specifically. I just recently read about a German tradition on Halloween of hiding all the knives in the house on that day.
How do I not know that?
I don't know. I just read that was a tradition in Germany that they hid all the knives in the home to, I guess, to keep from demons or spirits or whoever getting at them and killing anyone who lived there.
I now have something else I have to do on Halloween now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure,
man. If I wasn't busy enough.
You check that out. I'll keep looking for those tunnels under Worcester.
All right, we're on it.
All right. Jeff Belanger, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
That was great.
Thanks.
Great as you're really great storyteller, and that was awesome, Jeff. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for doing it, man. I appreciate it. And we should have beer. I have a proposition for you, a midlife proposition for next summer.
Oh boy. Okay.
I'm trying to put a team together who would like to go to the Sierra Nevadas for a week and look for gold on a haunted and abandoned gold claim.
Oh my
None
God.
of us. And the most critical part is that you're in your midlife and you have no fucking idea what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I'm
those are the
definitely
two-
qualified. Yeah.
And I was like, who do I know?
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah.
so it's possible we'll come back stinking rich, and it's likely we'll just come back stinking.
Right. Exactly. Like most of the guys that went out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you get some, free
November.
time from,
November. Yeah.
let me know. Let's go out for a beer and talk about that. Cause that sounds definitely like a midlife thing I'd like to do.
I got it in my head. I working on Ghost Adventures. I've talked to people that their weekend hobby is to go gold mining, and they rent claims. And so I'm looking. I'd hire a guide that would have like all the equipment, because like we're not buying that shit, and could tell us where to go. And the thought is like, let's really, besides like cameras and cell phones to take pictures, let's really try to live like 1840 for just, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. And pan for gold and dig for gold. And but people do this. You rent a claim, and whatever you find, you keep. And like this one guy I talked to, he's like, every 2 weeks a year, my buddies, we have an RV, and one year we had like $20,000 in gold that we found.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he's like, that paid for the next like 5 years of finding nothing, and so
Right,
but
yeah.
but either way, I was like, no, but I want to find like a really cool abandoned like claim,
Yeah,
with the
right.
old, so I'm working on it.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know when you get free time and call me or text me, whatever. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, cool. All right, hey, good luck with Fret Michaels. I hope I warmed you up.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, see ya.
Bye.